Recording in progress.
Okay. Well, good morning. Welcome to our May 2nd, 2023 Board of Commissioners meeting. We'll start with introductions. I'm Pat Malone, Commissioner and Chair.
Zana Giroux, Commissioner.
Nancy Wise, Commissioner.
Vance Crony, County Council.
Suzanne Hoffman, Interim County Administrator.
And in the room,
Ben James, Fire Chief, City Courthouse. With Griffith's Office and State Fire Marshal. Michael Curran, District Forester for the BX Special Organization. Leo Williamson, Protection Unit Forester for the Kelowna Unit. Jake Rule, Community Wildfire Forester, the Kelowna Unit.
Amanda Makepeace, Executive Specialist. Kayla Armstrong, Deputy Director of Community Benefits Consortium. Tracy Martin, Human Resources Director for Benton County. Eric Monroe, Board Reporter.
and joining us online,
Jeff Van Arsdale, Benton County Sheriff.
Darren Nichols, Community Development Director for Benton County.
all right, well, welcome. And next up, review and approve our agenda. Are there any changes, additions, corrections?
I'd like to add one item under other, the approval of use of our logo on a letter supporting funding for behavioral health.
Okay. Hearing nothing else, we will have two service district meetings immediately following the board meeting this morning. Are there any members of the public that wish to comment at this time? Hearing none, we will get to item number 4, our work session. 4.1, County Administrator Recruitment Update, Tracy Martineau. And do we have someone joining us online? Heather?
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm hoping.
Oh.
Yes, I see Heather Hanson.
Morning, Heather.
Good morning, Commissioners.
So Commissioners, I'll let Heather tell you a little bit about her background and experience. I wanted you to get a chance to meet her for yourselves. She is the recruiter for Raftellus that is guiding us through our process and our search for our next county administrator. And Heather, with that, I will hand it off to you.
Great. Thank you, Tracy. Good morning. Again, Commissioners, good to see you again. My name is Heather Gantz, and I am a senior recruiter for Raftellus. I have been recruiting in the local government space for over 15 years now. I am physically located in the Portland metropolitan area, born and raised in Oregon, so quite familiar with Benton County and the wonderful work that you're doing. And of course, continue to be excited about partnering with you, Tracy, and the team on this important recruitment. We are off and running. We've had some wonderful outreach. We have applications that are coming in, and Tracy and I would like to share a bit more about our timeline as we move forward with our recruitment.
Great. Well, do you have some update for us, Tracy?
I do. We have kind of a tentative plan in place that we wanted to run by you this morning. And I shared some dates with you previously. I hope that you have those in front of you as well. But just to review, Heather, please chime in wherever you feel necessary. But as a reminder, our first review of applications will occur on May 22nd. And that is Heather's step in the process where she will be reviewing the applications and doing the first sort. She'll be also doing an initial interview with the applicants at that point in time. And after that step in the process, we would do an internal screening. We had talked previously about Rick Krager, our CFO, Suzanne, and myself doing that screening, and that would allow us to make some recommendations to you for the initial round of interviews.
Any questions for Heather or Tracy?
Sounds like a good plan. I'm excited about it.
So far, so good. So that will occur around May 30th. I think we may even have put a hold on our calendars, Heather, for that date. So
did.
I think
Yep.
that's safe. And then we'll come back to you with recommendations on June the 6th. To talk to you a little bit about what we've seen. Heather will be part of that meeting as well.
We would prefer to do that meeting in executive session to honor the confidentiality of the candidates at that early stage in the process. We won't be making a formal decision. Again, it will be us making a recommendation to you for first round of interviews. So believe we can do that in executive session.
And by the way, I did take the liberty of checking in with both Amanda and Mariah to make sure that at least at this point in time, your calendars look pretty free, or that they were flexible enough for us to be able to manage around these dates. So let's see, that takes us to, we're planning for June 14th being our first round of interviews, recommend an internal panel that sits in on that round of interviews. This would be screening really for the technical qualifications of the job and probing their experience and background. And then a 2-day format, June 28th and 29th for the finalists.
Those would be in person. We would be welcoming candidates into the community, into the county, a multi-stage process where we would have internal and external stakeholders participating in evaluating and providing feedback to you on the candidates.
So some of you who have been here in the past will remember that we've actually do kind of a rotational schedule where the candidates rotate between those panels. We typically have a public reception as well. I did put a note in my email to you previously that we are aware that there's a Hope meeting on that Wednesday. So if you maybe think about whether you would prefer doing the reception on a Thursday or earlier in the afternoon or something like that. But we'll come back to you to firm that up. Heather, at that point, is there anything else you want to add about process?
No, I think we'll be, we'll be continuing to evaluate and do the due diligence on the candidates at each phase in the process. So as we continue to navigate through the process, we'll be doing online media searches on the candidates, as well as when we get to those finalists, doing a more deliberate and deeper dive into candidates' backgrounds and making sure that we're reporting that information to you along the way as well.
And the idea is the May 22nd kind of really first sort. The recruitment will still be open at that point. We'll still be taking more applications, but we're looking at the first batch that we get. Is that accurate?
Great question. Heather, how do you see that unfolding?
Yes, absolutely. So we did a first review of May 22nd as opposed to a formal close date, just to ensure that we continue to bring in qualified candidates. So while we'll continue to move the process forward from May 22nd, if we receive and or see an extremely well qualified candidate shortly after that date, we'll be able to build them into the process. So we will move forward from May 22nd, but not have a hard close date in case we have some wonderful candidate that chooses to apply just after that date.
Okay, great. Thank you. Anything
Any
else?
other questions from the commissioners?
I don't have a question. I don't know if my mic is working.
Say
Try it
something.
again. I'm saying. That's good.
Still showing you.
Okay, it's green, it's yellowy green. Nope, there it is. Okay. Sorry for that. I just wanted to say that I'm very excited and I'm having a hard time being patient, but I know that patience is a virtue. So I will be patient. I'm just looking forward to seeing all the candidates and getting the process going on for real. So thank you for all your work.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome. We'll continue to give you updates periodically as we navigate even before these steps.
That's what I was gonna ask is, Tracy, are you planning on weekly updates or to the board or as needed or?
Something between as needed and weekly. If there's any developments in between, I'll certainly get those to you right away, as I have in the past. And otherwise, if there's no news to report, I'll let you know there's nothing new at this point in time. But unless I hear differently from you, we'll go forward with these dates and plan around these dates and start setting that up, as well as reaching out to some of the stakeholders that would likely be invited for those final interviews to make sure we get this on their calendars as well. And we'll work with Corey for getting a public invitation out there.
Sounds great.
Well, looking forward to more news. So I think I heard something about we have several candidates that have already applied.
Yes, there are 6 applications so far and are continuing to have good conversations with candidates that are expressing interest, answering their questions, providing them with some additional information. So of course, we expect that candidate pool to grow over the coming weeks.
And the process is the information comes to you first, Heather, and then gets passed on to Tracy and us.
Yes, so I will do the initial review of all applications, and then I will do an initial interview with candidates that are qualified for the position, and then engaging in a conversation with Tracy and the team on the 22nd, so that we can then move forward with a recommendation to you as commissioners in our meeting on the meeting on the 30th with Rick, Suzanne, and Tracy. And then June 6th, we'll be bringing that information forward to you. You'll receive candidate materials, resume, and cover letters, and any additional information that the candidates share with us through the application process for a good conversation and discussion.
Okay, thank you.
I would just put a plug in for some of our department directors have been great about sharing this announcement out on their private LinkedIn or personal LinkedIn pages. And just really appreciate when our leadership team gets engaged in that way as well. So.
Well, I think that shows we're all interested moving forward. So.
Agree.
Anything else? Okay, well, thank you, Heather and Tracy, and look forward to more good news.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Next up, our friends from ODF, come on up, and I don't know if you want to, fire marshal should, we have more chairs.
I think we're gonna go first.
Okay, great. Sometimes people are a little shy about coming to the big table, but
Don't blame them.
welcome, and probably introduce yourselves again and then start your report.
All right, will do. So good morning, Chair Malone, other commissioners, county staff. For the record, my name's Michael Curran. I'm the district forester for ODF's West Oregon District.
Good morning, commissioners and county staff. Leo Williamson, protection unit forester for ODF out of the Philomath unit.
Good morning, Jake Rule. I'm the community wildfire forester out of the Philomath unit.
Okay, so just kind of standard update from years past, kind of go through an update across the various programs we administer. And then if we've got time, go over a quick high level statewide update, and then allow questions if you all have any. So you all should have a handout front and back from us. This is just an annual reminder of, at a very high level, everything the district administers as far as what programs ODF has. And then on the back of it is our current org chart of the current staffing that we've got. So just like a lot of folks are having right now, we've had a lot of turnovers at the district. Just in the last 14 months, we've had over 50% turnover in our permanent staffing, which is fairly significant for us. And the good news though with that is it's all due to retirements and or internal promotional opportunities, which is a good thing. We've had a couple folks that have put in their 30+ years and have decided to retire. And then just with all the new positions within the agency, we just have a history of having really good staff at the district that are getting internal promotional opportunities, which is a good thing. So as far as Benton County specific, staffing for our Philomath unit has been fairly good. We haven't had a whole lot of turnover except for in our state forest unit. Longtime unit forester Evelyn Hukari, who had 32 years in, decided to retire in October. So that created an opportunity for Cody Valencia, who's our new unit forester for state forest. So he's currently running our state forest shop. And then we also had turnover in our operations forester and our cell prep forester. So handful of new state forest staff locally for us. But we're just working on getting those folks trained up and moving forward. So, and then we've got some new staff within Philomath, but we'll cover those later on when we cover a forest resources update. So we finally were able to reopen as a state government on May 1st to the public, which was a good thing. So our doors have been open since then. And the good news is customers are coming back in. And so it's good to interact with the public again. Coming into the office ever since we were able to open them back up. So that's been a good thing, and hopefully they'll be able to stay open moving forward. And then just a couple little shout outs for you all before we move on to the programs is just want to give a thank you to Deputy Jerry Williams and the county's continued support in the Benton County Woods Patrol. That program continues to be beneficial for not only us, but other forest landowners. So something we'd like to still continue to see moving forward. But again, just thank you for the continued support with that program. And then also a shout out to Genevieve Stokes and her staff in your guys' public affairs shop. They started partnering with us to help get fire messaging out during fire season, which has proved beneficial for the your constituents in Benton County. And that seems to be continuing to move forward. So just a thank you to Genevieve and her staff for helping us get the word out, especially when it comes to fire prevention messaging during fire season for us. So with that, kind of moving on to our programs. So looking at a 2022 fire season update. We had about 47 acres burned last summer, which is well below our 10-year average, which is a good thing. Our 10-year average is around 306 acres burned. That's a little skewed for the 2020 Labor Day event. But in all, though, 47 acres is pretty good summer for us as far as minimizing acres burned. Our fire season was a little bit longer than average. We lasted about 110 days in fire season this past summer. And that was actually even with a later start to fire season, just due to the very wet spring that we had. But we did end up going towards about the end of October almost before we had to call fire season, just because it remained dry into the fall. So, and then as usual, our top 3 fire causes that we typically run into are tied around equipment use, debris burning, and recreation. And those are 3 areas that we try to focus fire prevention messaging on the best we can, just to get the word out there for folks to make sure they're following fire restrictions. So with that, I'll hand it over to Leo on a quick update on just local fires in Benton County.
Yeah, so for fire season 2022, I would categorize our initial attack as light in Benton County. We had 2 fires of note, which I'll just mention a few facts about each one here real quick. The first being the Lucky Mute fire, which was actually outside of fire season on the 4th of July. So just 2 days before we went into season in 2022. That was related to an active logging operation and some activities that were occurring on there. To their credit, they had some equipment on site to try to deal with that, but just the nature of the weather that evening, that fire got established in a log deck and then burnt about an acre in total on that one. That was declared controlled on July 8th. The second of the 2 fires I'll mention to the board here is the Norton East fire. That was on August 17th. That grew to a size of 18 acres, burning mostly in grass, but had some brush component in there as well. A farmer was harvesting their field and was grinding some metal in a cut grass field, and the fire got away from him in that case. Super excited about, just the mutual aid response from our partners within Benton County on both of those fires. So I just wanted to take a moment to highlight that and just say how proud I am for the work that we do together here locally. That second fire, which started on the 17th, we declared control on August 18th. That's it for 2022.
Yeah. So kind of the big question we get this year is, what's fire season going to be like this summer? So I'll try to characterize it the best I can for you. Kind of a unique position that we're in just with the weather we've received this winter. Most areas of the state are showing above average snowpack, which is a good thing. But if you look at rainfall totals, especially on the water year that the National Weather Service tracks, we're actually below average for rainfall totals, especially in the valley side. In the Salem area, we're around 5 inches short. In the Eugene area, we're around 10 inches short, to where if you actually look at the drought index map, it is showing Benton County, Polk County, and parts of Lincoln County is abnormally dry, which is kind of the first stages of drought that you get into. So it's going to be interesting to kind of see what weather we get in May and June, to ultimately kind of see what fire season is going to be like for us. But with rainfall totals being below average, I'd say there's potential for us to have a pretty busy fire season potentially there with it. But at the end of the day, May and June are what I ultimately track when it comes to weather and what fire season will be like. I think last year's a good indicator of that, where we had a drier winter, but had a very wet spring and early summer, to where we didn't go into fire season until after the 4th of July. And our live fuel moistures actually stayed fairly high throughout the summer until we got into late fall, which hence why you see the lower acres burned for us. So time will tell, but May and June are really going to dictate what fire season will be like for us. And they are predicting a higher than average temps and below average moisture for that time period. So we'll see what comes. But the good news is we do have above average snowpack across most areas of the state. And that's at least a good start. So with that, pass it over to Jake, and he'll just provide a brief update on our community wildfire program and the current grants we administer.
Awesome. Well, since I started this year in January, I've been meeting with a lot of our Firewise communities and their leaders, trying to figure out what their needs are currently and going into the future. So getting a good basis on that, and just getting up to speed on the grants that we have currently within our areas, which are the Ren Grand Ronde area, Monroe and Fishback, Panther Creek and Ekman areas, and a new one in Liberty. The ones that are in Benton County are Wren and Monroe. And between those two, the last couple of years, we've completed 232 acres of fuels reduction and about 9,000 hours of landowner contributions. So pretty good stats there. We're looking at different areas around the county to kind of get a new grant area established in those, down near Alsea, and potential funding in the Hoskins Kings Valley area as well. And then along with those, we also had some Senate Bill 762 funding. Those projects are wrapping up right now, but they had a lot of acres completion in those. It was a little over 75 acres that those two projects completed. But that's all I have with updates.
Yep, just probably add with that, just thanks to the work by the commissioners and county staff for getting the Benton County CWPP updated last year. That was really good work to kind of help us reprioritize what areas we need to focus on, and kind of help driving our efforts moving forward with fuels reduction work and specific projects that need to get done. So just thank you to you and your staff for taking the time to get that updated. So, and then pass it over to Leo real quick for a Benton County forest land classification update.
Yep, thanks, Pat, for your work on that committee. We met in March. It was a pretty straightforward meeting for the group. We typically go through and just chat about areas within Benton County that may need we may need to take a second look in terms of forest land classification. We determined that no major changes were needed. So our next five-year review in that process will be due up in 2025, where we'll take a little bit more in-depth look at Benton County as a whole and determine if we need to make changes moving forward. But thanks again for your participation, Pat, and to the rest of the folks on that committee.
My pleasure. Having one meeting a year.
Yeah. Okay, moving on to our state forest update. So just as a reminder, in Benton County, there's two types of state forest land that we manage. One of them are our Board of Forestry lands, which we've got 8,300 acres of. And those are lands that any harvests that are done, 2/3 of the revenue goes back to the counties and local taxing districts. And then we also manage common school fund land properties as well. There's 553 acres in Benton County. And any harvests that are done on those, most of the revenue goes back into this common school fund from there. So with that, we just did an update to our current implementation plan, which I've talked to some of you about individually. Our state forester approved those a few weeks ago. And the plan for that is to kind of help bridge the gap over the next 2 to 3 years. As we get closer to making a decision if we move forward with an HCP or not. The big take home with our new our updated implementation plan is that our expected revenues will be going down with that. And what that means as far as volume for Benton County or the district specifically, we typically harvest anywhere between 11 to 12 million board feet. And with the new implementation plan, we'll be going down to about 9 to 10 million board feet. So not a huge impact for us locally with that. So revenue update for you. FY23, so the current fiscal year that we're in, revenue to date to Benton County has been just slightly over $467,000. Last fiscal, we were able to help bring in just under $799,000 to Benton County. And then moving forward, our FY24 annual operations plan, what our current plan is, barring any changes through the public comment period, we'll be getting 2 sales in Benton County and an estimated 1.1 million in revenue to Benton County and local taxing districts from those 2 sales that we've got. So, and that's kind of it for state forest. There's some statewide updates that we'll get to later to kind of cover the HCP and where we're at with that and the decision. So moving on to forest resources, I mentioned some additional staffing updates. So the private forest accord that we're currently working through right now. With that, the district was able to gain 2 additional positions. So with that, we gained an additional stewardship forester to have, and that position is going to be housed in Philomath. So historically, we've just had the one in Philomath, and now we've got 2, which is a good thing. And then through the private forest accord, there's a subset of rules for small forest land owners. So anybody with 5,000 acres or less. They've got a little bit different rules to play by than our larger industrial landowners. And with that, through the accord, they wanted to recognize that and make sure there was dedicated capacity for small forest landowners in particular. So we did gain another position to work with small forest landowners. We're calling that position the SFO stewardship forester. That position got started 2 months ago. And they're starting to make their way around and meeting all the small landowners that work within our district. So there's 2 additional positions we historically have not had within our forest resources shop. So, and as a reminder, just our forest resources work, the ultimate responsibility there is to make sure the Forest Practices Act is being upheld. So with that, Leo's got just a couple local updates for the county.
Yep. Just real quick. So for 2021, we had 467 notifications filed within Benton County. We had an increase in 2022 to 476 notifications in Benton County. Just a handful more, which is, it's trending about average for us in terms of operations on private land within Benton County.
And these are notifications for timber harvest.
Yep. So harvest, road construction, stream crossing replacement projects, they're all lumped into that same number. And then, we just continue to stay busy with our federal incentives programs through the Natural Resource Conservation Service, the Farm Services Agency, and have a good partnership with our federal partners here locally. So still good work going on there, helping small private landowners do restoration projects on their land.
Okay.
Just a few items here for a statewide agency update. Staying with the private forest accord. We're really moving into the implementation phase of the private forest accord. All the rules have been developed and put into OAR. And really now the big push is to get trainings done both internally to staff and also externally to landowners, operators, folks that need to kind of know what's going on with the new rules. So that's the big push that's going on right now. And that's going to continue through this spring, next summer, into the fall, probably even over the next year, as we work on dedicated trainings for the specific rule sets within it. And I would just mention for awareness, there seems to be some misinformation being put out there. I'm not sure exactly who, and how. But there seems to be this interpretation that with the private forest accord, that small landowners, so those landowners that have 5,000 acres or less, will not be able to harvest any timber with the new rules. And that's not correct. They will have a different set of rules to follow for sure. But small landowners will still be given the access to be able to harvest timber on their land. So the agency is working with groups like OFIC and other external entities to try to get better messaging out there, just to make sure that small landowners are aware that they still will have the ability to harvest timber with the new rules. It's just going to look a little different as far as what they need to follow. But just an awareness and a heads up that that's out there as far as some misinformation that's out. I mentioned the State Forest HCP and our companion FMP that would go with that. We were planning on a September decision by our Board of Forestry on whether or not we would be moving forward with the HCP or not. And it appears that that's probably going to get pushed back potentially to November, but that's not final yet. Our agency leadership's working on a best plan forward, and really what the big hang up with it is making sure that we have the best modeling put together that we can, so the board can make an informed decision on what the true impacts of the HCP will be as far as the new protection measures we'll need to follow. So just know that we will not have the September decision on the Board of Forestry as we work to try to figure out what the updated timeline is to make sure that we can get a good modeling project put together so the board can make that informed decision. So just a heads up on that one. On the fire side, I don't know if you saw the press release that went out a couple days ago, but our state forester decided not to move forward with our insurance policy to pay for large fires. Reason being is it just got too expensive. We would have had to essentially pay around $78 million to be able to get into the insurance policy. And that's higher than what our average large fire costs are every year. So it just wasn't a good business decision to move forward with it this year. It's something that they will entertain next year, potentially. But with not moving forward with it this year, there is a chance that we may not get it again moving forward. So that's something that we'll continue to work on in coming years, but just know this year that we are not pursuing the insurance policy like we've historically have had. And I believe that's a policy that's been in place for 51 years. So
That's the Lloyd's of
London.
kind of
Yep.
Sitting on top of all the other.
Yeah. Yep. The very complex funding model we have for large fires. So and then just one last note. So Andy White, our longtime area director for the Northwest Oregon area, which West Oregon district falls under. There's 5 districts within the Northwest Oregon area. He is retiring this month, and we will have new leadership in the area in place. Don Everingham will be our new area director, and he started yesterday in his position. So if there's ever tours or meetings that you're involved in with us, there's a chance you'll see who our new area director is. But just a heads up that we do have new leadership within the area. So And I think with that, we'll see if you all have any questions for us. We kind of covered everything pretty quickly. So yeah, if you've got any questions, we can take them.
That was a very thorough report. I appreciate it.
I've got a couple here. Appreciate you, Genevieve Stokes, and getting communication. I remember talking about that you folks have wonderful information, but I think we all need help getting the word out, especially to normal homeowners, especially living in rural or the WUI area, to be aware of what the conditions are and maybe modify what you have in mind for that day, depending on the conditions. So I hope that cooperation continues and maybe even increase. I know we had our mobile reader boards with fire information on it, and I think that's a really good partnership for forming our community. Jake, a couple questions for you. So what was it? I think Allison had that position several years ago, and she moved on, and then for 2 years or longer, that position, your position was vacant, and my understanding was that was a funding issue, and that has got resolved temporarily or longer term, or do you know at this point?
So yeah, our goal there is to continue to find funding streams for that position, but it's centered around securing grant funding for those. So we've been fortunate lately that we've been able to continue to secure grants to keep folks like Jake on staff. So we hope that continues into the future, which is, why we try to look forward for other areas within Benton County and the rest of the district to, target additional fuels reduction projects and funding sources.
Yep. And our strategy really with our grant funded positions is we don't want to just bring somebody on knowing we only have 6 months worth of funding, right? We're just not going to be successful with recruitments, especially nowadays, just with all the struggles folks are having. So we try to make sure that we've got dedicated funding for at least 2 years when it comes to our grant positions. And we've been fortunate with the work Jake's doing and his counterpart to the north in our Dallas office, Trask Caution, have been doing with being able to acquire grants to where we can keep those folks steady funding moving forward for at least 2 years. So that's kind of our ultimate strategy, just to make sure that there's enough funding to back those positions up. So
again, really hated to see the drop in that effort, especially as people get more aware of, there is, even in Western Oregon, there is can be a significant fire season, and I drive around my neighborhood and see firewood piled on the porch. So maybe that's not the best place to store firewood, and it just can be fairly simple things, but not everybody knows best practices. So I wish you well, Jake. What kind of incentives are there besides communication? Is there some funding for homeowners, landowners to make improvements in their situation as far as reducing fire danger?
Yeah, there's some kind of tied closely to the grant areas that we secured. So referencing the Monroe area, we kind of just drew a boundary around a bunch of tax lots within that area. And people that qualified or were close to that boundary who had fuels reduction that they could do, we would set up projects for them that granted them between $100 and $600 worth of funding per acre. So that's kind of what we generally do. And if we don't have a specific grant area tied to, say, right down the road from our office, something like that, a lot of people call in asking if they can get funding or if I'm available to come out there and look at their property just because they are in that more wooded wildland urban interface. So we kind of have a little bit of leeway built in there to go and look at their property and give them an assessment of things they can do to kind of make their property a little bit safer and defensible.
With the additional stewardship forester capacity, I would think you have a lot more opportunity to get out on site and do more messaging as well.
Yeah, two separate issues.
Yeah, I understand, but nonetheless, just in terms of operations, that's, you mentioned that a large number of the fires result from various kinds of operations or slash burning. And so it's an opportunity to get messaging across about fire season.
Yeah, absolutely. And so the part of the duties of those stewardship foresters is fire prevention for industrial operations as well. So we have a robust messaging on the beginning end of fire season and then an inspection process throughout the season for those operators on private land. So it's, you know, sort of two edges of the same sword there, right? We're talking about private small homeowners and then the industry side, but
yes,
yes, we do have coverage there with the stewardship foresters.
I think the more messaging that gets out better, and whatever message, I mean, to all of the community.
Yep.
So, yeah.
Yep. And for what it's worth, our industry partners that we work with,
They do a very good job of being prepared with the necessary fire equipment and things like that. Unfortunately for us, most of our fire causes are just from the general public, and not necessarily the operator community. So.
I guess I'll just commiserate with you a little bit about the misinformation piece. If only we had $1 for every misinformation we see out there, right?
Yeah.
Regarding our daily jobs. So
yeah,
what can you do?
Yep, it's a challenge, but we're doing the best we can locally just to make sure we're getting out in front of the small forest landowners, and just making sure they have the correct information, just so they can make an informed decision on how they want to manage the property. So.
Well, and Michael, you were talking earlier about our weather this past winter, and I think that I've worked outside for decades in Western Oregon, and that's the biggest change I've seen is lack of wintertime storms. And then, that used to be pretty dependable. It was just a question of if it's a kind of normal year or above average, and for a better part of the last decade, we've had a lot of winters that have been pretty light as far as storms, and I think the only reason we're in decent shape on snowpack is March, and
yep.
Well, that's not winter, and so I think we have to be prepared for whatever the new normal is, at least if the last decade is any indication that we're not going to get our usual heavy rains and snows in the winter, and if we're lucky, we get them in the spring. And some years we're lucky, and some years we're not. But I think that's going to make your jobs more challenging. But glad to hear that last fire season, 47 acres and was the total, and maybe we can get some credit for our good communication effort that It wasn't all the weather, it was that we were doing a good job, talking to people out there, so.
Yep.
Anyway, appreciate the thorough report. Anything else for us?
Nope, that's it. I do just want to make sure we set enough time for Brent and Chief James, so.
Okay.
And
Great.
just, thank you for the information in the packet. That's always helpful to have ahead of time. And thank you for
Okay.
taking the time to come talk to us.
Okay, yep, thank you all.
Thank you guys.
I also wanted to comment that it looks like you have very few vacancies on your seasonal fire crew. Congratulations on having so many returning people.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Pretty good for this season.
Yep.
Yeah.
Were increased wages, part of that?
What's that?
Were increased wages part of, doing better for recruiting?
Yeah, not necessarily increased wages. I think we're just fortunate to have Corvallis, OSU, Western Oregon. And just kind of where we're positioned on the coast, just the having Newport, Lincoln City, Waldport, Toledo, kind of in our backyard. We're able to get just a lot of local kids put in for these positions, which is beneficial for us. So.
And that all works well as long as fire season doesn't start before school gets out.
Yeah,
Okay.
yep, 100%. So.
All right, thank
Okay.
you.
Now you can get up.
So we have Brent Griffiths. Morning.
Good morning, Chair Malone and other commissioners and county staff. For the record, my name is Brent Griffiths. I'm with the Oregon Office of State Fire Marshal, the Emergency Response Unit. And I'm assigned to Benton County here as Regional Mobilization Coordinator. It's a fancy title for a liaison. I'm basically a liaison between the state and the local fire service when there's a need for additional resources. So got some information that I want to share with you. Just a few things. One is just a reminder about how OSFM will work with the board. If there's a large wildfire that threatens communities or structures, and then want to provide some information about some investments that the legislature has made here locally within the county to increase response capacity. Before I get into that report, though, Chair Malone, if I could just address something that you just highlighted, which is a desire maybe to be able to advise the community about fire danger, whether we're in fire season or not. I'm not in the program, but our community risk reduction program is working with local fire departments on fire danger signs. So our office was able to put out the opportunity for agencies to apply to purchase these signs. We purchased those, and they should be delivered in mid-May. And so I think just about every fire department, not only in the county, but in the state, purchased those. And so they'll be able to place those where they think there's good visibility to just provide more information out there for the public about fire dangers. So we will work closely with our great partners from ODF on making sure that messaging is consistent. They obviously have their fire danger signs as well, and we want to match those. But again, just something that our office is doing to make sure the public is even more aware of fire danger. So
What kind of signs are you talking?
they're going to be similar to what you see already that's posted by ODF. So I haven't seen them specifically. I don't know if you know.
So they kind of refer to them as the fire talk boards.
Yep, okay.
The low, moderate, high.
Yep.
Yeah.
The ones that already exist in and around the county, just being able to bolster those and get more added.
Great.
All right. Well, like I said, I wanted to just highlight how our office will work with the county if there's a large fire within the county that structures or that threatens structures or communities. You recall I was here last year and provided that information. I did provide in your packets as well, kind of a guidance document that we have, and then a template of that delegation of authority in the event that we are asked to come in and provide structure protection for homes that are outside or structures that are outside of a fire district. Right. So
If there is, just to kind of walk through a couple of options that we have as an agency to provide resources to the county. If there's a large fire that is threatening structures, even if it's within a structural fire district, that we're able to send resources a couple of different ways. One is under what we call immediate response, and this is a tool that became available to us under Senate Bill 762. It's where we're able to provide resources from outside the county to an incident without having to enact the Conflagration Act. Familiar with the Conflagration Act? That's where we go to the governor and ask for her to authorize resources, the governor to authorize resources to send to that incident. When we do send those resources, they are paid for by the state. There's no local obligation there. So outside of that Conflagration Act, we're able to send resources. If it looks like sending those resources would keep a fire small and keep it from going to a conflagration, which is obviously the hope. If it is determined that there is a need for the Conflagration Act to be enacted, and that we need to come in and with one of our incident management teams, and that fire is threatening, again, structures that are outside of a fire district. And that's where we would come and work with you as a board to obtain a delegation of authority. Since those structures are not within a fire district, they're not under someone else's responsibility. We would then work with you on that delegation of authority. And I apologize, we got up here and started talking without having a chance for Chief Janes to introduce himself. But Chief Janes he introduced himself earlier as the chief of Corrales Fire, but is also the County Fire Defense Board chief, new position from I think 6 months ago or so, somewhere in there. So it would be someone that we would be working with as well when it comes to a large incident that requires additional resources. So I did also include in the packet, just to kind of highlight the number of structures that are outside of a fire district, right? I mean, a lot of the county is covered by a fire district, but I would say there's probably more than about half or so, just looking at the map. And if you were able to take a look at this, you can see what I'm referring to. And I apologize, it's not the greatest map. There should be a better way that we can identify those structures that are there. But there are approximately, let's see, for Benton County, 645 structures that are outside of a fire district. So there is a number of those are not necessarily homes, but structures, outbuildings. They're not within a fire district that if needed, we're able to come in and help protect. And again, we would work, if there is that fire that's outside of that fire district, we would be working closely with the Fire Defense Board Chief Janes, likely be also working Brian Lee, the County Emergency Manager. If I'm able, as that incident emerges, I would also be up, coming into the area and be working closely with all involved to make sure that we've got resources on the ready if necessary. With any questions on, I get into the my other updates on grants.
Just a minor one. What is the location of the handful of structures that are just north of Corvallis?
So just north of Corvallis, and then to the west,
Yeah.
talking about, and so signified by the triangles, by the green triangles.
No, those, oh, no, I'm looking at the red dots, the unprotected buildings.
Okay, red
no-
dots. Probably Chief James, maybe you want to talk about that area.
Yeah, I can't identify exactly what the ones are from the map. I have a similar map. We'd have to zoom in and take a look at the tax lots, but
Yeah.
it appears that they fall outside of the Corrales Rural Fire Protection District and that Adair line in there.
Yeah, I know that there's an area, I think it's along that Pettibone Ridge.
Yeah, that kind of
we went
looks
out-
exactly where
yeah,
that could be.
Yeah. We went out, we toured there during one of our forest tours a while back. Okay.
And then if I could, real quick, just the biggest area of note for structures and unprotected land is what we refer to as the Greenberry Gap there. Recently, the Fire Defense Board has taken some steps to kind of better provide protection there, even though it's not in a district to collect fees. So moving forward, as soon as we get it programmed with dispatch, we'll be dividing kind of a north-south line around Gruber. If you know where that's at, where if it's north of that line, Corvallis Fire will respond with an incident commander, 2 resources. And then you'll get a resource from Philomath, an engine, or a resource from Monroe. So that fills out 4 structure engines and an incident commander, which is what we call a box alarm. We would, of course, bill for whoever's home is there that we put out. We'd hit their insurance with it. If it's south of that line, Monroe would be the incident commander and send 2 resources. We would send 1, Philomath would send 1. So those areas are going to get a response, assuming we're able to do that, depending on call volume. Our highest priority is taking care of, obviously, our taxpayers, but if we are able to send them, we'll get down there. In the past, Corvallis Fire's response has been to send a single unit. And that it's difficult to extinguish a house fire. It's difficult to do a lot of things with 1 unit, also puts our staff at risk. So we've kind of beefed up the commitment there. And there's also the legislation, which I can't specifically speak to, but it's in committee, I believe, to kind of create a 7-mile circle from any fire station that would essentially force those people into a fire district. So depending on what happens there, there's potential to close a whole bunch of that gap.
I just wanted to interject for a second and say, in case anyone is watching this after the fact, we were referencing page 18 of 107 of our electronic page or of our electronic packet.
All right. So wanted to also just talk briefly about some of the investments that have been made by the Oregon legislature into the fire service, specifically here within Benton County. We recently awarded 2 departments within the county here with wildland apparatus. And so this was something we were able to do through monies provided by Senate Bill 762. We allotted enough money to purchase about 76 wildland apparatus and place those throughout the state. Benton County benefited from 2 of those. Monroe received a Type 3 engine. That's a large wildland apparatus that's able to go off-road, carry at least a crew of 4 and have a good water supply to be able to address wildland incidents. And then Corvallis received a Type 6 wildland engine, or what we call a brush truck. Smaller engine that is more maneuverable than that larger Type 3 and able to get into maybe some more rural areas, tighter driveways. So we expect the delivery on those late this year, 2024. There are also a couple of surrounding fire departments that border, or in Lynn County that border, obviously those agencies as well, and would be able to provide assistance to the region. That was our intent with this program, is to place these engines where they could benefit the region, not just be used locally. So Harrisburg also received a wildland piece of equipment, as well as the Albany Fire Department. So did you have something that you wanted to say there?
No, I just would touch base. As you may or may not be aware, during red flag days, we have what's called an all county response. And as you know, many of the fire departments in Benton County are mostly volunteer, nearly all volunteers. So Corvallis Fire ends up helping out significantly with those. And with this piece of apparatus, that gives us the opportunity on those red flag days to push it out to the county to assist, combined with some upstaffing funds that we receive from the fire marshal's office. On those red flag days, we actually add staff to our daily minimums to put them on those vehicles. So if anything happens out in the county, we're able to commit a resource out there, where on a normal day and without the units, depending on call volume in the city, we may or not be able to get out there and help.
Thanks, Chief. And that's a great segue to the next point I was going to make, which is the upstaffing grant that our office is able to offer. And we're doing it again this summer. This is a grant of $35,000. That's made available to fire departments for them to bring on seasonal staff during fire season. And so we just announced that for this fire season last week, and looking at awarding those by the end of the month. And we've allotted 6 million for that opportunity, and so it should benefit quite a few departments. I think there were nearly 200 last year that benefited from that opportunity. We are prioritizing this year to agencies that have 2 million or less in property tax income. So really looking at those departments that can use the money. Certainly doesn't exclude those that have a larger property tax income, but certainly prioritizing for those smaller departments. And then speaking of capacity with personnel, we have offered a grant to agencies that would allow them to bring on or provide funds to bring on full-time staff. It's really the intent of this opportunity is to really get them off the ground with regard to being able to increase their full-time staff. It is our grant is one that is a 3-year grant that every year has a match that increases each year for the agency. So first year, just a 10% match. Second is a 25% match, and the third year is a 50% match. And the hope is that within those 3 years that agency is able to find funding to be able to keep those staff on full time. This will just help get them off the ground. And so it will probably be awarded to 30 or less agencies, so not quite as broad as our seasonal grant, but it's up to 4 full-time employees, so it could really benefit departments, and that should be announced this week for agencies. And as far as I know, I believe just about every agency within Benton County applied for that. There is a priority on that as well with regard to who we're looking to help, and that is looking at prioritizing agencies with an operating budget of less than 10 million. So lastly, just a quick agency update for the Office of State Fire Marshal. Folks know we are currently a division or bureau under the Oregon State Police. Become our own state department July 1. So it's exciting time for us as we become our own agency and everything that comes along with that. We've relied on the Oregon State Police. They've been great partners, but for everything from HR to IT to everything that it takes to run an agency, and so we're having to fill those positions and move and all that by July 1. Quite a bit of work has gone into that already, but we will now be reporting directly to the governor and not have to compete with the priorities that the Oregon State Police has. Again, great partners, but I think this will be good for us to move out on our own. So that's all I have. Happy to answer any questions you may have.
I'll follow up on your last point about being a separate agency. I know maybe it's been a couple of years now. Emergency management did a similar break from the National Guard.
Yeah, military department.
And
Correct.
So was this a separate legislation that created this, or was that a package?
I believe it was separate. Yeah, a separate legislation that was passed in the 2021 legislative session. So same year as Senate Bill 762, which was, that legislative session had a very intense focus on wildfire response. And as we looked to become kind of that lead agency in assisting local departments with figuring out ways to increase wildfire response, part of that was to become our own agency, but it's its own standalone bill.
Okay. And I guess other comment is just glad the state is stepping up and recognizing the needs and the help being a partner with the local organizations, but providing additional resources that just aren't available locally. So hope that trend continues.
If I may, I don't think one thing we mentioned is the ability for us to coordinate with Brett on getting air resources into the county, which we typically have not had. So that there's a lot of great work happening at the State Fire Marshal's office, and Chief Ruiz Temple deserves credit and her staff deserve credit. Senate Bill 762 has been a huge leap forward, especially for more rural counties like ours, that when we have that event, we can call State Fire Marshal's office and potentially get air resources that we were going to pay for before, be paid for by the state. And then also just to share with you from the Fire Defense Board side of things, we have a drill scheduled May 18th with the different Fire Defense Board chiefs and the State Fire Marshal's office to go through what that process looks like. So we're not trying to figure out when we actually have a fire, we need these resources through. So just kind of combining a couple of those things, the state is doing a lot of great work to help us as a smaller county, and that we're taking the time to try to figure out how to put all that in play if and when we need it.
Great.
Yeah, thanks, Chief Janes, for highlighting that. I apologize for not mentioning that. I think that's a good point, that the air support is now available to local agencies, and we're able to fund that. Obviously, that's a pretty expensive resource. So, and I might just mention that one of the other things that we're able to offer, just to again try and be more proactive on wildfire response, is we now have the ability to pre-position resources in another tool that became available to us under Senate Bill 762. So if data indicates that there is an increased threat of wildfire, we're able to mobilize resources and pre-position them in an area to facilitate a quicker response. So just again, one of the additional tools that we have been given by the legislature to respond to wildfires. So
Great. Looks like there aren't any other questions.
I just have a quick comment. So our Benton County Sheriff Jeff Van Arsdale was online. He had to run, but he put a comment in the chat that says, "I want to thank the three at the table for their hard work and dedication to the Benton County community and for their continued partnership." And I will just add my thanks as well.
And along those lines, I'm glad you mentioned Brian Lee, who does a great job trying to get us prepared for whatever's coming. So these partnerships are critical to being able to respond.
Yep, and I also mentioned to Brian's working closely with his counterpart in Lincoln County for a joint county tabletop exercise, I think next week. There in Eddyville, just to get the two counties working together and walking through a scenario on just kind of roles and responsibilities for all the agencies and who's responsible for what, which I think will be a good practice. So
Sometimes fires don't know where the county lines are, so
they do not.
That's good to hear. Well, thank you for your very thorough report. Good luck to the fire marshal on being a separate agency here in a couple months. Looking forward to hearing how that works out. Thank you.
thank you, commissioners.
Thank you.
Do we need a short break?
Yes, please.
All right, we'll take a 5-minute break and then come back and start with the consent calendar. we will, are we ready? Okay, we will resume our board meeting. Item number 5, the consent calendar. Are there, all in favor, say aye. Consent calendar is approved.
So it's flashing green and red now. Okay.
It's coming. It's good. All right. Next up, proclamations, 6.1. In the matter of proclaiming May 21st to 28th, 2023 is National Public Works Week. We have Laurel Byer. Oh, okay. Well, even better, we have Paul Walsinger.
Before the Board of County Commissioners for the state of Oregon, for the county of Benton, in the matter of proclaiming May 21st through the 27th as National Public Works Week in Benton County. Proclamation number P 2023-005. Public works infrastructure, facilities, and services are of vital importance to the sustainable communities, the health, safety, and well-being of the people of Benton County. Such facilities and services could not be provided without the dedicated efforts of the public works professional who plan, build, operate, and maintain the transportation system, land records, water supply, and sewage systems, motor pool, and public buildings and structures countywide. These professionals represent our local unit of government. It is in the public interest for residents and civic leaders of this county to gain knowledge of and maintain a progressive interest and understanding of public works and public works programs in the community. 2023 marks the 63rd annual National Public Works Week, sponsored by the American Public Works Association. The theme of this year is Connecting the World Through Public Works. Therefore, let it be proclaimed that May 21st through 27th, 2023 is National Public Works Week in Benton County, and community members are encouraged to join us with the American Public Works Association to learn more about the vital importance of public works, the dedication of the public works employee, and to celebrate their efforts.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We need a motion to approve. All right.
I move approval of proclamation number P 2023-005 proclaiming National Public Works Week, May 21st through 27th of 23.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We are.
Thank you.
Thank you, commissioners.
Proclaiming. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you for you and your team and all the work you do.
Thank you, Commissioner, very much for your support.
All right. Next up, 6.2, in the matter of proclaiming May as Community Action Month in Benton County. Haley. I have different names connected to, so.
Oh, that's okay. Good morning, Commissioners and County staff. My name is Kayla Armstrong. I'm the Deputy Director for Community Services
Could you get
Consortium.
a little closer to the
Oh,
mic,
sure.
please?
Is that better?
Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
just, you can move the mic or two, or however you. Yeah.
There. Okay. Before the Board of County Commissioners for the State of Oregon for the County of Benton, in the matter of proclaiming May Community Action Month in Benton County, proclamation number P 2023-000. Since 1964, Community Action has been a nationwide network of over 1,000 agencies serving 99% of America's counties in rural, suburban, and urban counties. The network connects millions of individuals and families to approaches that help them succeed and promotes community-wide solutions to the intersectional challenge of poverty. The vast range of services offered across all community action agencies provide life-changing supports that create pathways to prosperity while simultaneously empowering and collaborating with the communities they serve to remove systematic barriers for disadvantaged communities. Community Action continues to implement innovative programs that create individual, family, and community resiliency, focusing on a broader range of community challenges to ignite economic growth and ensure all families can benefit and will continue to be a voice for the disenfranchised. For 43 years, Community Services Consortium has been the designated community action agency serving Lynn, Benton, and Lincoln counties. CSC provides education from preschool to PhD, job training, housing and utility assistance, home and energy conservation, food assistance, and more to an average of 75,000 community members each year via grants and donations that invest more than 18 million into the Tri-County service region. Additionally, CSC employs nearly 200 local community members and works closely with and supports hundreds of other local shelters, service providers, school districts, and educational institutions, family-owned farms, small businesses, local governments, and more. Therefore, be it proclaimed that May is Community Action Month in Benton County in recognition of the dedication to our local community action agency, Community Services Consortium, and all community members are encouraged to join in this observation.
Great, thank you. I would entertain a motion.
I would move approval of proclamation 2023-006 proclaiming May Community Action Month in Benton County.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Thank you. Thank you for your work.
Next up, 6.3, in the matter of proclaiming May 2023 is Mental Health Awareness Month in Benton County.
Good morning, commissioners. I hope I'm coming in clear. Yes. Before
Damian Sands, welcome.
Well, welcome. Hopefully, am I coming in clear for everybody? Yes, great. Yes. Then I'll begin. Before the Board of County Commissioners for the State of Oregon, for the County of Benton, in the matter of claiming May Mental Health Awareness Month in Benton County, proclamation number P2023-007. During the month of May, Benton County recognizes mental health awareness to enhance public awareness of mental health and dispel the stigma surrounding it. Millions of people face stigma related to mental health and may feel isolated and alone, going years before receiving any help and raising awareness that this will with effective treatment. Those individuals with mental health and other chronic health conditions can recover and lead full productive lives. Benton County is committed to creating a community where everyone feels comfortable reaching out for the support they deserve, which is crucial to ending the stigma around mental health. Residents should be able to access high-quality prevention, support, rehabilitation, and the treatment services that lead to the recovery and a healthy lifestyle. Recovery and wellness encompass the whole individual, including mind, body, spirit, and community. The benefit of preventing and overcoming mental health challenges is significant and valuable to individual well-being, families, and our community at large. We must encourage relatives, friends, co-workers, and providers to recognize the signs of a problem and to guide those in need to appropriate services and supports. Therefore, be it proclaimed that May is Mental Health Awareness Month in Benton County, and all community members are encouraged to join in this observance.
All right, I would entertain a motion.
I move to proclaim May Mental Health Awareness Month in Benton County. Proclamation number P2023-007.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Motion carries. Thank you, Damian, and I think it's great that you with the numbering, you call this 007. So
thank you, Commissioner.
Let the record know. Thank you. All right, moving right along. 6.4 in the matter of proclaiming May 2023 is Historic Preservation Month. Inga Williams. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you. In the matter of proclaiming May 2023 as Historic Preservation Month in Benton County, proclamation P 2023-008. Heritage activities shape the social and cultural landscape of Benton County communities, and heritage traditions bring people together in shared purpose and celebration. Heritage programs like historic downtowns and certified local governments help institutions leverage financial and other resources that contribute to the betterment of public spaces, more effectively bring people together, and build knowledge and skills that reach beyond heritage alone. Heritage organizations collect, preserve, transmit, and interpret Oregon's rich history and culture and the landmark stories and artifacts that help shape current and future generations' sense of place and identity. Heritage organizations and traditions bring people together in shared purpose and identity, serving as institutional and networking glue that binds communities together. Benton County's theme for Historic Preservation Month is Windows into the Past, Views to the Future, which encourages our community to remember the past and incorporate the knowledge of our history into our mindset about the future. Therefore, be it proclaimed that May is Historic Preservation Month in Benton County, and all community members are encouraged to join together to celebrate this observance.
All right, I would entertain a motion.
I move to proclaim May 2023 as Historic Preservation Month in Benton County, proclamation number P 2023-008.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Motion carries. And would you like to, you gave us a handout to have some detail on what's going on in Benton County.
Yes, I would love to. So one of our Historic Resources Commission members, Adrienne Fritz, created this poster. And she's online. Yeah, hi, Adrienne. The window you see is from the Willamette Grange. One of their historic windows, and currently they are going through the process of raising funds to replace their vinyl windows with more historic wooden windows. So, and they are also celebrating their 100th year this year. So Adrienne is also the creator of our Specters of Benton County, History Mystery. And this year we put in and received a grant from the National Trust for Historic Preservation, a $5,000 grant to go towards that game, because it is such a unique way of educating the public on the history of our local resources. So we're very excited and very happy to have Adrienne as part of our commission and helping out with our Historic Preservation Month activities. And we've also partnered with the city of Albany this year. So that was a great addition. And so you'll see in our list of events, also events that are occurring in Albany, and they have also adopted our theme. So we hope that this partnership will continue on into the future, and we'll be able to do a lot more collaboration with them. Let's see, if you got the Visit Corvallis email yesterday, Historic Preservation Month was top billing on that email, so we were very happy with that. They have been a great partner with us every Historic Preservation Month. They put all our events on their website and are super great about promoting our events. And this year, our celebration, our award ceremony is taking place on May 25th. It will be at the Whiteside Theater, and I'd like to invite all of you to join us. We will have the City of Albany and Preservation Works will be presenting awards. The Benton County HRC will not be presenting awards this year, but we will be celebrating all of our volunteers, especially our tour guides. And we haven't figured out exactly what we'll be doing, but we will be celebrating them. And we hope that you can join us and help us out with our celebrating of our volunteers. If we did not have our volunteers, we would not be able to present any of these events. So then that is it. Thank you very much.
I seem to be on vacation every year during the celebration, so I once again won't be able to make it, but there are so many other lovely events to go to that I will try and pick and choose. So if people that are just listening want to know where to find these events, are they on our website?
They are on our community development website, which is the Historic Resources Commission, and the HTTPS, the web address is in the poster. It is also available on Visit Corvallis. They have all of our events scheduled, and also the Albany, which I'm not exactly sure. I can't remember. Albany visits, or is all I can't remember what their site is, but they're their tourist site.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Well, that is it for proclamations. Next up, 7.1 floodplain program updates. Darren Nichols and Toby Lewis. Come on, Darren.
Okay, so Toby Lewis, floodplain administrator for Benton County Community Development. See if I can get this in the right spot. So the floodplain program updates that I'm providing today, one is the Lucky Mute River watershed area. We've been working with the Army Corps of Engineers to update the flood hazard mapping in that area and ensure that it is more accurate than the way it's currently mapped. That project is about 2 to 3 years and it's wrapping up. And the results indicate or have shown that the mapped flood hazard area there is much more narrow than it's currently mapped in a lot of areas. It is widening in some areas, but for the most part, it's narrowing down substantially. We currently have 234 buildings mapped as being inside that flood hazard area. With the new mapping, that number will be reduced down to 17 buildings that are currently mapped and adding 2 buildings to that. One of those 2 buildings is a dwelling, and the other is an accessory structure. So the information provided in the packet is a table and then just an image of where that dwelling, the new dwelling and accessory structure are located. And that's over by, it's off of Kings Valley Highway and Tatum Lane, I believe. The other update is that the Corps of Engineers has offered to start scoping for project scope and also looking for funding opportunities to improve the flood hazard mapping in the LC watershed. LC watershed is the only watershed in Benton County that isn't currently on a schedule to be remapped. So we're taking care of the Lucky Mute watershed right now. FEMA's Region 10 risk map project is covering the Upper Willamette watershed area, which covers everywhere else in Benton County except for the LC watershed. As we know, with these types of projects, they're usually multi-year projects. In order for the Corps to begin looking for funding and looking and kind of scoping out the logistics of what that project would look like, they have requested that Benton County submit a letter requesting their technical assistance for the project, and that draft is in the packet.
Any questions?
So today, basically what we're doing is just approving this letter in order to initiate the process of requesting resources so that we can do a similar update of the floodplain area for LC River in Benton County, or will it be the entire LC River, Benton and Lincoln? Are they seeking a similar letter there?
Thank you. I forgot that part. So yes, I am asking for support to submit the letter. Right now, they're asking for Benton County's support. If there is an opportunity to partner with Lincoln County, we would certainly look to do that. Lincoln County's flood hazard mapping was substantially adjusted several years ago through a different project. So they may have already taken care of that area. I know there's portions or locations along the boundary between the two counties where the floodplains just don't even line up. So the goal is really improved mapping. And so if the Lincoln County area isn't included in that, we would certainly look to partner with them.
Okay.
And who did the original mapping?
I believe it was FEMA. So the original mapping for Benton County, the analyses were completed in the mid to late 70s. The initial map set for Benton County became effective in 1986. We had a revised map set issued for Benton County in effective 2011. That was covered the whole county. It did not include revised data, revised flood hazard data. It was just revised topographic information. So FEMA took their original data set and used better topographic mapping information to adjust the boundaries of that, but they didn't have the ability during that project to revise the modeling that was used to create those flood hazard areas.
Which led to some really weird little anomalies.
Yeah.
The original flood hazard mapping was all based on aerial imagery, correct? If it was flown, and now it's all becoming satellite and LiDAR data driven. And so it's a lot more accurate.
Yeah, they are using LiDAR data with the Lucky Mute River project, as well as with the larger Upper Willamette Watershed project. They've had surveyors out in the community surveying new cross sections so that they can create new models based on current development in the floodplains and current information. And then they're using that LiDAR data to help with the topographic information so they can run the models better. In the outlying areas like LC Watershed and Lucky Mute, Muddy Creek, we have what are called approximate zone A areas. So that is areas that have the least amount of detail that went into the original study. The goal with these projects, with Lucky Mute, that's already happened. We've got better cross-section data, improved LiDAR data. So that's why we're seeing such a significant change. The LC Watershed area is another one of those expectations where the data will probably shift substantially.
Excellent. I'd be happy to make a motion. I move to direct staff to sign and submit the attached letter requesting technical assistance from the Army Corps of Engineers with flood hazard map revisions in the LC watershed.
Second.
All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Well, thank you and looking forward to seeing a more accurate mapping in the county.
Thank you. Me too.
Next up, 7.2, update on FEMA draft implementation plan for the National Flood Insurance Program and Endangered Species Act. And that's Toby. Are you helping out, Darren?
Well, just for context, we were here to see you a couple of weeks ago about this issue. And I just want to be clear, coming back to you more quickly than we thought, in part because this is an evolving project and Toby's by far the expert. So she's going to share the data. I just want to be clear. We are coming back to you much more quickly than we thought we were. The other thing I was going to just mention on that last item, we have recently asked our federal partners to reach out to the county administrator and to Toby Lewis as the floodplain administrator as our two kind of joint points of contact for Benton County. There's been some confusion with the revolving chair, whether or not to reach out to elected officials and then which one or who's in the chair. So I just want to be clear that you may see a little difference in terminology, identifying the administrator and the floodplain administrator as the official points of contact for Benton County. Part of that comes with a responsibility on our end to make sure we bring things to you in a timely fashion. So that's the spirit in which we're back in front of you again today. Thank you.
Okay, so as Darren mentioned, this is a topic that we brought to you more recently, about a month ago, when it first came up. And at that time, we were under the understanding that it wouldn't have as big of an impact as it appears it might today. Since that time, there have been several meetings. FEMA has worked at providing outreach and public comment opportunities at a series of meetings throughout the state, both in person and online. And I do have a couple FEMA staff members online today, John Graves and Galib Katra, to answer questions at the end. They're interested in learning more about comments and concerns that all the communities in Oregon have and feedback on this project. So I know there's a lot of acronyms associated with the project and terms. So if I start getting too deep into something that becomes confusing, please just stop me and let me know. Our goal today is to make sure that we're keeping you in the loop, providing you an update on the evolving understandings, and just check and see if there's any feedback or guidance direction that the board may have. Eric, there was a slide that was, sorry, thank you. And the slide will come up in a minute, but so let's see. So the draft implementation plan, the objective is to identify regulatory methods for communities to use to ensure that the development that we're authorizing in floodplains doesn't cause a take on endangered species habitat. The plan describes ideas for several options for paths that might look like, but it doesn't yet identify specific standards. The request right now is for communities to provide feedback. Some communities are providing joint feedback, other communities are providing individual feedback. There's kind of a balance between how much concern there is for impacts, and then also whether those concerns warrant a joint response or individualized responses depending on community situations. So on the slide here, we've got a high-level overview of the mapped flood hazard area in Benton County, and then a more in-depth look at the proposed 170-foot riparian overlay buffer that's identified in that draft plan and what that might look like for Benton County. So the 100-year floodplain in Benton County, 100-year floodplain is our flood hazard area. It's the mapped area. It basically is a 1% chance in any given year that the water might, or the ground might be underwater during a flood event. So in Benton County, that mapped area covers approximately 112,000 acres of land. That's about a quarter of Benton County. And it includes about 500 miles of waterway. Those waterways consist of rivers, streams, and ponds. So, and then if we take a look at the 170-foot riparian overlay buffer, the concept proposed in the plan is that this would be kind of the first step in a graduated implementation of mitigation options. So the first 170 feet from a waterway would have higher regulatory standards and more mitigation requirements. Once you move beyond that 170 feet, the mitigation ratios might be 1-to-1 instead of something that would be higher. There would also be some graduated mitigation options depending on if you're developing vacant land with a brand new structure versus expanding a structure. So looking at the impacts of the proposed development on potential habitats. So the closer you are to a waterway, the more impact you might have. Also, if the property is less developed, you'll have more impact than if it's already developed. And then as you move farther away from that, but that 170-foot line is what's proposed as kind of the division line between higher and lower standards for first look at projects. I want to say a quick thank you to Webster Slater, one of my coworkers, for helping verify numbers and helping make sure that we're looking at appropriate numbers on here. Just a quick reminder, these numbers are very preliminary and they're meant to be just general estimates to give a sense for the scope. So in Benton County, that 170-foot riparian buffer overlay applies from the waterway and extends 170 feet or until you reach the edge of the flood hazard boundary. So it's not just a flat 170 feet. It only applies to the area that's inside the mapped floodplain. That would cover about 9% of our mapped flood hazard areas in Benton County. It includes about 1,300 structures, which is about 4% of Benton County's total structures. And this is not including areas inside city limits. This is just outside city limits. That 1,300 structures includes about 200 dwellings. So that would be about 20% of the dwellings that are currently located in flood hazard areas would be located within this 170-foot buffer area. The dwellings are located in a mixture of residential and resource zones. We have less development in resource zones, less structural development in resource zones because those tend to be larger parcels. And the purpose of the zones is to preserve farming and forestry. We have more development in residential zones because the properties are smaller and geared towards residential development. But as you can see by the table on the right-hand side of the slide there, when we look at the application of this riparian buffer overlay to zone type, we're talking about, so for resource zones, those would be farm and forest zones, the buffer would include about just over 3,000 parcels or tax lots, almost 34,000 acres, which is about 90% of that riparian buffer area would be, sorry, yes.
Erica, can you move the images of the people off of the table?
Unfortunately, it's on.
Can you do that? Okay.
I can do it here, but it doesn't happen.
Maybe
change
move it
the
all the way to
view.
the other side of the page there. Oh, no.
You changed view to not full.
Yeah,
screen,
he's
so I
doing
don't-
that.
okay.
You might be to the other side of the screen.
You might need to move it a little bit back into the center just so that we can see the people. There you go. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you. So I've got it broken down by resource zones and then residential, commercial, industrial, and other. So for resource, that's the bulk of the area that would be mapped in this 170-foot area that is going to be our resource, is going to be consist of resource zones. So that'll be about 90%. The residential zoning is going to be up about just over 3% if you combine the two. So rural residential is land outside of urban growth boundaries. Urban residential is land between city limits and urban growth boundaries. So we're looking at about just over 500 parcels impacted, residentially zoned parcels impacted. I'm combining the numbers on here a bit. About 1,200 acres of residentially zoned land, and so that would be about 3% of this 170-foot buffer. And then the commercial and other zone types. So the other zone types are floodplain agriculture, open space, public, and special use, which is primarily around Children's Farm home area. So total acreage affected by the 170-foot buffer would be about 37,000 acres. That's about 33% of our currently mapped flood hazard area. So as I mentioned earlier, we initially thought that there was fairly minimal impact to Benton County. After further information gained from the presentations that FEMA has graciously been giving around the state and conversations among other counties, it does appear that this buffer concept would have more of an impact. And as I mentioned in the memo, there's a range of responses and concerns throughout the state, depending on what the geographic nature of each community is and how developed or undeveloped those communities are, because we're talking about cities, and counties and lots of different development types. The goal is to maintain the right balance for Benton County and make sure that we are continuing to follow and engage in this process. We're bringing it back today to get a sense for if the board has any further guidance or direction that you would like for us to follow. Working on preparing comments at the moment. And then I also have, as I mentioned, John Graves. He's the floodplain management insurance branch chief for FEMA Region 10, and Galip Katra. He's the senior environmental specialist on the line, and they're available for answering questions and hearing feedback that you may have. So any questions on what I know that's a lot and I apologize.
Yeah, and of course, it's challenging because of the uncertainty as to the specifics of what's going to happen in each of the different zone areas based on the alternatives. And given that the majority of the lands that will be affected here are in resource lands, are there restrictions on how resource lands can be used within that 170-foot riparian buffer?
So continuing agricultural practices related to farming and forestry, most of that's probably going to be farm zones, but would be continue to be allowed. This is mostly looking at significant changes to the ground and the way water flows across the ground.
So any kind of ditching, diking,
or building structures.
Building structures.
Yeah. So, and I think at this point, it's probably appropriate to let FEMA answer questions like that. They can give you a better sense for what we're working with. But yeah, that's the general idea.
John or Golub, do you want to add anything to what Toby shared or answer the commissioner's question?
Yeah, this is John Graves, and as Toby said, I'm the branch chief for floodplain management and insurance here at FEMA Region 10. And number one, thank you for having us and letting us join in on the conversation. Yeah, to just add on to and maybe help clarify what Toby was talking about. In the biological opinion, and then there was an errata that was issued by the National Marine Fisheries Service. It tries to clarify that your normal agricultural practices are not going to be affected by this biological opinion. So what we really are talking about is your plowing of your fields, those sorts of activities, anything that you normally do on your day-to-day basis that doesn't require a floodplain development permit.
Mm-hmm.
So in your packet, you have a copy of our slide presentation, and one of the slides talks about our definition, which is any man-made change to improved or unimproved real estate, including mining, dredging, filling, and a host of other examples. And so what seems to be getting some folks kind of some consternation is the fact that they need to get a permit for dredging. That is very specifically an activity identified as development, and so it needs to. The act of the dredging is one thing, and if you're just bringing it back to, you're taking out the silt in the waterway. It's where you put that silt that really ultimately ends up being the question of is there mitigation that's required, because you're just removing the silt to keep the waterway viable for whatever you need, whether it's dewatering or bringing water, whatever the case may be. But if you're placing the silt within the special flood hazard area, then we need to figure out, are you filling, or are you having any sort of adverse effects to the habitat that's there? And so that's a piece that we need to work on, admittedly, and get a little more clarification on. But that's what we're hearing from folks, is that that's where they need some clarification, and we're going to work on that throughout this EIS process.
That makes sense. Having yet another permit and doing something that is a fairly routine matter for a lot of agricultural operators, clearing out ditches. I can understand why they're frustrated. But it does look like that's the majority effect. And then in rural residential and urban residential areas, it will have a more significant effect, I'm assuming, because would it bar new construction altogether?
No, we do not prohibit any construction within our program. What we have is performance standards that must be met. So and to be clear, also the requirement to get a permit for dredging is under today's program as it is without the biological opinion. So that's been a requirement to get a permit all along. But to answer your other question, yeah, we have performance standards. So you have to build with your floor at a certain height. If you're going to build in a floodway, you have to ensure that you're not causing an increase in the base flood elevation. And basically the added requirement under the biological opinion is that if you're, as Toby so eloquently explained earlier, if you're going to develop close to the waterway, then you're probably going to have a higher mitigation ratio than if you develop further away from the flow, from the water course. And so it's just that you have to mitigate for any adverse effects to our three key habitat functions, which are vegetation, water quality, and then any flow of the water. You have to ensure that you're not taking away the flood carrying capacity of the water course.
Mm-hmm.
So that's equated with fill.
A lot of our current regulations are already in place that would address many of those issues.
Yeah, so in Benton County, if you have a vacant piece of land, we require that the dwelling be sited outside of the floodplain if there's enough space to do so. If there isn't, then it would still be allowed inside the floodplain,
but with performance criteria.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess from my perspective, I'm trying to wrap my head around the rub. So from what I understand, this is a balance between impacts on the property owner and engaging activities that they would like to engage in versus balancing the environmental piece, the riparian and floodplain habitat. So I mean, I'm all for protecting significant habitat without hearing from individual community members that this could directly impact. I'm not sure I have enough of an opinion I feel like I can't represent that voice without hearing from them first.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if that's helpful, but.
And for me, again, as you were saying, Toby, before, I still don't see that there's a huge change in our regulatory effect under this proposed regimen than from where we are now, because I think we are already tighter than some counties in the way we approach our floodplain management. But that's where I'm unsure is what that delta is. And generally speaking, I support the intent of the buyout. But I do need to understand whether there are some real friction points. And I'm with Nancy, I don't quite know where those might be.
Right, and yes, absolutely. And it is difficult to provide adequate feedback without doing a full scale, community outreach project. There will be opportunities, from my understanding, for FEMA will be providing additional comment opportunities later on after this process is done. The key friction points, I think, at this point that we've been able to identify are what those increased mitigation requirements might look like. Having a higher mitigation ratio if you're developing property, so adding an addition to an existing structure, putting a new structure in on a piece of land that either if it's a new dwelling that's on a property that's entirely in the floodplain, or if it's an accessory structure on a piece of property that may have land in or out, or maybe entirely in the floodplain. Accessory structures in Benton County are still allowed to be constructed in the floodplain. And so those types of projects would have higher mitigation standards based on my understanding of what's in the implementation plan.
And are greenhouses considered accessory structures? And so they have to have, and that is an issue I have heard about, and that can be a topic of consternation.
Yeah. So the term structure is kind of a fun one. It has a lot of different definitions depending on which regulations you're talking about. For floodplain definitions currently, if you're talking about a greenhouse like a hoop house that has flexible vinyl siding, no rigid walls, or not more than one rigid wall, it's not considered a structure for floodplain regulation purposes. So it's not subject to the elevation requirements. Once it has more than one rigid wall, then it becomes considered a structure for that purpose, and then either needs to be elevated or vented depending on how the structure is used and how high the ground is and things like that. The draft implementation plan would tie floodplain development much more closely to or more similarly to the stormwater management requirements that were just implemented last March. And so really what it's looking at is ground disturbance. So for example, a greenhouse, a hoop house with flexible siding, it would be considered ground disturbance, and therefore that disturbance of the ground would need to be mitigated. And then the ratio at which it would need to be mitigated would depend on how close or far away from a waterway it is, and whether it's inside this 170-foot area or outside of it.
So this is a substantial change in the way that we think about our floodplains, not just as a flood hazard, but also as a habitat. And I think it's important to know that this will have direct impacts to property owners. It also has direct impacts to our staffing and our kind of expertise and understanding of how to review and evaluate impacts to habitat. It's just, this is a new thing for us. And that's partly why we brought it back, was as we began to recognize the potential significance here, we thought we owed it to you at least to provide information, and then to get some sense, as Toby's already said, about what level of engagement would you like us to take with the community, with the federal agencies, with other counties. We had earlier kind of said, we'll just keep an eye on things. Now we're feeling like we may want the board, we would like to open the door for you to provide advice, guidance on how to move forward.
Yeah, well, I'm also looking at, one particular slide in the presentation on page 83 of the packet that talks about different ways that communities can meet the no net loss standard. And, each of those progressively requires more and more technical skill and proficiency, as you say. And for some counties, King County, my home county in Washington State, they have all of this expertise. But for Benton County, that's a tall order. So I understand what you're saying about the staffing aspects as well, just in order to implement this kind of a program. So that is a concern. I'm still not sure that I want to align with some of the counties that are just saying oppose, because I appreciate the intent. I think where I'd like to be is that we're at the table to at least determine what's reasonable and what might be possible within more of an education-oriented approach and an incentive-oriented approach rather than a hardline regulatory approach, which is where we've tried to go.
So I guess I have a question. So with Willamette County and the Oregon or the Association of Oregon Counties sharing comments, I guess my question is, has this become more political than originally anticipated?
Oh, it's always been very
Well, I'm
political.
I'm trying to delicately ask a question, so, and I'm pretty straightforward, so I'm trying to.
Well, I've been watching this at arm's length at the Association of Oregon County Planning Directors, and I think at first there was some definite feelings among a handful of counties. What I've watched over the last couple of weeks, say a month or so, is more and more counties are sort of coming to the table with shared concerns. So we're still watching that at arm's length, but bringing it back to you to partly recognize that this has some impacts for Benton County, and also wanting to be careful in terms of how we approach it. I really appreciate our colleagues from FEMA joining today, because I think it shows the level of partnership and the potential possibly of it approaching an innovative solution that's incentives based and less regulatory, but I don't want to speak for John and Golub. Is there, can FEMA help either with community outreach and or with some of the evaluation responsibilities that will eventually fall on Benton County? Are there resources that you all either recommend or could help us with?
Yeah, so I can't really come to the table with money. I'll be upfront about that.
We'll take staff.
But I can offer technical assistance using some of my staff and working with the community as you are developing your approach, and that's one of the beauties of what we're trying to do here. As you look at that slide that you were referring to earlier, when we were initially trying to figure out how to develop this plan, pathway A is in response to a lot of comments that came to us that said we need absolute, rigid, clear and objective standards. We need to know exactly what it is you want us to do. Okay, we can do that, but we know that that's not exactly what everybody wants, right? Then you go, as you move more towards the right, you get to the other side of what we were hearing, which is we need flexibility. We need the ability to tailor this to our community and what we want to do, given our values and our habitat that we have and everything else. Great. So it's real hard to meet clear and objective and give me flexibility. So the only way that we can do that is to kind of put it back to the community to say, hey, where do you want to sit on this spectrum? And I'll be honest that in the packet, you've got a pretty good start at the very least coming in with a pathway B approach, where Toby has done a good crosswalk of kind of what is being asked based on her understanding and what is already in your code. So we want to recognize what you already have, where you have already taken those steps forward, and then build upon that wherever we need to. And so I really think you've got a good start at a pathway B kind of option. And if we need to, we can kind of move to a pathway C. Granted, we don't have a whole lot of direction for communities on kind of what all of those look like now. That's going to be built out based on the comments that we receive through this EIS process. So I think you're in a really good spot to really be able to move forward with this. And my team is set up for technical assistance as we work with communities to build their pathways.
So I have a question. Is it possible for communities to have two alternate paths? I mean, I know that's probably twice or more than twice as much work for staff, but having one pathway that is the rigid, clear and objective, and then another pathway that would be more flexible, and the applicant can choose which way they would like to go?
I think that the answer is yes. We would have to carefully look at how we design that. And kind of work through that, but I think that there is a way to do that, and that's more of the pathway C type of like programmatic pathway C approach. But I think that there would be a way to design something that's a little bit of a hybrid of A and B, and maybe even some other very community specific things.
Yeah, so from what I heard in the presentations that John and Golub were giving, it does sound like path C would be that option for kind of picking and choosing and creating a more customized set of regulations for a community that really is tailored to the community specifically.
And to our own resources here, we don't have many listed species at the moment in terms of anadromous fish. So just taking into account the resources that we have and what level of response it merits, we could tailor something a little bit more. But yeah, but that takes again a knowledge and skill and level of expertise that we don't have internally. It's certainly here in the community.
Can I provide feedback that I would prefer? I would like more outreach to landowners who this would impact.
Yeah, I think, as the guidance and the requirements become more defined, and right now the draft implementation plan includes a lot of ideas, but the specifics haven't been identified. And so as that, becomes more apparent what that is, and certainly before we implement any kind of new regulations, public outreach would be incredibly important.
Are you saying it's maybe a little too early to engage the public because there's too many options, or things aren't firmed up enough to do anything more than confuse the community?
That is a really good question.
Thank you.
I think, it gets back to that idea of balance, right? So finding ways to obtain feedback about the impacts of it without inciting panic is important.
Because I see the chart there, and the numbers are wonderful, but what does it mean?
Right.
Who is in the resource category or other categories, and at this point it seems to me anyway kind of theoretical, and not wanting to proceed on something that, well, it seemed like a good idea, and then you get to the on the ground, and I've heard the word flexibility mentioned, and I think that's probably a good thing. I see something about in the FEMA packet, all comments must be postmarked by May 5th for this round of feedback. That's Friday.
Yes. That is.
Yeah.
So perhaps it's the next round of comments that we have to engage in more specifically with our community.
I guess I will just say, in general, I feel like Benton County does value the environment, and I think that's a priority of a lot of community members in Benton County. So if we're weighing it from, I would think that Benton County would put a lot of weight on that piece. There may be some individual landowners that might not be as happy with it, but in looking at the whole community, my feeling is that a good amount of weight would go to the environmental aspect.
I think that it's going to be a mix, because I can think of a few landowners that I know that, are active agricultural operators, and they will face some additional challenges. I think clarity is going to be important. So I like the way you're thinking, Nancy, about having a set of minimum, very, very clear standards, or kind of a menu of flexibility for people to work with, from that mitigation, and more of a menu approach. So I think I don't know what we can tell you all now, other than I think we need to stay engaged, and that's the most important thing. And that as soon as we have more definitive options from our colleagues at FEMA, then we need to take it out to the community, and maybe start with our, community development roundtable, and have conversations there, and then move out into the community further to engage people.
Has the planning commission had an opportunity to talk about any of this stuff?
No, we have not shared with the planning commission yet. I think that's a good suggestion. I'm hearing a couple of things, which is helpful to us at this point. One is, let's not take kind of a knee-jerk oppositional approach. Let's be thoughtful and mindful. We need to hear from community members, especially as we get some more specifics. We need to find a way to incorporate environmental values, but also be mindful of the changes that may be incumbent on either property owners or ag operators or forest operators. And that FEMA has some technical assistance available to help us with these conversations, which I really appreciate. And so thank you, John and Gala, for being here today and also being good partners. I think for today's purposes, I think we know more or less where we stand. If we put something together to respond to the May 5th deadline, it would be along the lines of what we heard today, which is this is important. We need help. We need more specifics, more certainty, and we want to be partners with FEMA in finding what is the right policy for Benton County. As that gets more clear to Commissioner Wise's question, I think this is something that you could either, direct us to take to the Planning Commission when it's ripe, or maybe it's something that the board and the Planning Commission want to add to your quarterly meetings as kind of a priority that needs addressed, and you could give them a role in helping us figure this out.
Well, I would propose that we authorize staff to put together Benton County specific comments based on our discussion today, and that Commissioner Malone have authority to work with you to finalize that in order to get it out by the May 5th deadline.
Is that a motion?
That's a motion.
Second.
All in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Motion carries.
And
Yes.
I'm typing furiously to get that.
Was it a
That's
yes?
good, 'cause we can't remember it.
Oh, yeah.
That's good, because I can't even remember what she just said. So. It sounded good. And Darren, thank you for your summary. That was very helpful. I mean, I feel like we're up here just going, I don't know. And then you just come through with some very well put together thoughts. So thank you for pulling that out of our discussion.
Well, thank you. And thank you for indulging. This is not easy work. It's a game changer, I think, for all of us. I don't want to speak for John and Gala, but the biological opinion and the kind of resulting impacts has put all of us in a really important conversation, but one that we maybe weren't prepared for. And so I know Toby and I have had some kind of soul searching chats in the office, and we just said, we owe it to the board to bring it back to you and get your thoughts. So thank you for being good partners with us.
Yes, thank you, Toby, for all your work and other staff's contributions as well.
Sure, thank you.
I'm looking forward to reading the minutes to see what we said. So, and I appreciate John and Gail, our friends at FEMA, for helping with this discussion today.
Yeah, thank you for being here and for sharing your slide presentation with us.
And I'm sure we will be in touch. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Our pleasure. Thank you for having us again.
Next up, 7.3, discussion and decision regarding supplemental budget 2311.
There's a 1, 2, 3, 1, 1, 1.
Duly noted.
It's another.
Okay.
Good morning, commissioners. I feel like I've seen a lot of you lately.
But it's always a pleasure. I am here today to do some final wrap up on the 21-23 biennium budget. Within that, we do have two funds that are going to require amendment before the end of the fiscal year. First up, within the general fund, the sheriff's office received additional revenues from Federal Homeland Security for an EOC position-specific training. So we are here to request that public safety operations is increased by $32,091. And then the second fund is the trust fund. NAPE has received higher than anticipated logging funds. They are requesting to increase appropriations to repair the logging roads and also repair the concrete floor at the Bazell barn to attract more wedding parties, etc., with the repaired floors. So I am just here today to present those to you to bring forward for a public hearing at the next meeting, 2 meetings from now. Are there any questions?
This is the simplest budget supplement.
To be quite honest, I felt kind of silly doing it since it's so small, but you know, especially Dawn really wanted to get that in there, so we're covered budgetarily. And then with NAPE, they want to get those repairs done now and they couldn't wait, so.
I'm happy to. I'm happy to make a motion. I move to forward this item to the May 16th, 2023 board meeting for public hearing.
Second.
All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. So on the 200,000, the logging's been done and it's the revenue could have been recognized in this
Yes,
budget year. Or
yes,
next
sir.
budget year.
It probably could have been recognized actually in the last supplemental. I think we undershot the need a little bit, so the revenue is in the funds now.
Okay. All right, well, thank you.
You're welcome, and I'll just sit here and wait for the next two, I guess.
I don't.
There's the other service district.
Yes.
Oh, service
But
district.
Commissioner Oger added something
yeah.
under E.
And I have one item that I added, yeah, and that one item, I sent each of you an email message that contained a letter from the Association of Oregon Counties requesting that we add our logo to a letter requesting behavioral health funds. And it's just a summary of all of the behavioral health funds that AOC, MHP, and AOC are supporting for behavioral health coming out of this session. But it's time sensitive, so I wanted to just get approval from the board to use our logo on this letter that calls out all the specific funding that our behavioral health programs need.
You want to make a motion?
I move that we approve the use of the Benton County logo on the AOC MHP letter to Senator Lieber and Rep. Nose about funds from this legislative session for behavioral health.
Second.
All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. All right.
And Commissioner Ojo, you will
Yes,
follow up with
yeah, it's,
that.
yep.
Okay.
We do need to actually send the logo. So Amanda has been doing that? Yeah. Okay, thank you.
All right, I will recess the board meeting. Oh, I guess I could.
Dealer's choice.
I will adjourn our board meeting and convene the Alpine County Service District Governing Board. First up, comments from the public. Are there any comments from the public? Hearing none, item number 2, new business, discussion and adoption of supplemental budget 23-113 for the Alpine County Service District, resolution R 2023-005. All right.
All right, good morning again. The Alpine County Service District budget is requesting to increase the materials and services appropriation within the sewer system operations. They had higher than anticipated costs to maintain the sewer lines than was anticipated at the prior budget adoption. And so they are requesting that we move $7,334 out of contingency into materials and services.
I move to forward this item to the May 16th, 2023 Alpine County Service District Board meeting for public hearing.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Is there any other business for the Alpine Service District? Hearing none, meeting adjourned. Next up, the LC County Service District Governing Board. Open the meeting. Are there any comments from the public? Do I hear any comments from the public? Hearing none, we'll move on to new business. 2.1, discussion and adoption of supplemental budget 23112 for the LC County Service District Resolution 2023-006. Jen.
Yes, the LC County Service District budget is also needing an adjustment this fiscal year. They too have had higher than anticipated costs to maintain the sewer lines than was anticipated at budget adoption. We are requesting to move $13,000 from contingency into materials and services to cover those additional costs.
All right, any discussion, or if not, I would entertain a motion.
I move to forward this item to the May 16th, 2023 County Service District Board meeting for public hearing.
Second.
All in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Motion carries.
And if you could remove that excuse me from the motion, that'd be great.
I will also note that in this packet, the meeting motion for the next meeting has the wrong number for the resolution in it.
Duly noted.
It says 005, not 006.
All right. Next order of new business is 2.2 in the matter of approving meeting minutes from the February 7th, 2023 meeting.
Move to approve the minutes.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Number 3, is there any other business for the LC Service District Governing Board? Hearing none, meeting adjourned. Good job. Yes.